You can see that URL there. You can see that this room gets pretty full, so please jump in and get yourself RSVP'd for that event going forward. Now, I want to turn our attention back to the primary focus for today, which is our seed investment program. We've got these 10 great companies that have been with us for about a year. Many of them are ready to move on and get their additional funding. They've had great customer traction stories, great technology stories. So again, please give them your attention right after our keynote speaker, who I'd like to introduce now. So Catherine Courage has been a great supporter of the Startup Accelerator and the startup ecosystem as a whole. Catherine came to Citrix 5 years ago from Salesforce.com to run our design group, and that's really expanded into a cultural change here at Citrix, where we've started to implement initially workshops, but now much more deeply into our product groups, this whole design thinking methodology. So it applies equally well to large organizations as well as to the small startups. So we noticed in some of our early startups that they struggled with design, and so she's been very good to support our program with resources from her organization to help our startups do design thinking and come up with great products. So with no further ado, Catherine Courage.
Thank you, John. It's my pleasure to be here today. It's such a treat that we have a Startup Accelerator program here at Citrix, because I get to do my day job in the enterprise world in a big, large company with 9,000 plus people helping drive design, but we've got this side project where you can dip in and get that joy and experience of a startup. And the interesting thing is a lot of the principles really apply across the board. So what I'd like to do today is share a little bit of our story here at Citrix, but really leave you with a sense of the principles about design that are valuable, whether you're a 5-person startup or a 9,000-person company. So as John mentioned, I've been here at Citrix for 5 years now, and it's been a really interesting journey. We just turned 25 last year, which is a pretty fantastic milestone for a tech company. And the year I joined, we turned 20. And I joined to build a design competency from the ground up. You know, we had little pockets of design here and there throughout the company, but when I joined, people said, "Oh, awesome, we're investing in design, more icons." That's what people thought of design. So I knew we really had quite a task ahead. And at the time, this is really the way we thought about our products. We thought about more features equals better product. And this was a mentality that worked, 5, 10 years ago, but it really doesn't work today. And to simply show you the model Y, if you look along the x-axis, number of features, and along the Y, user delight, when you're in very early stages, you do have to have enough features. You have to have relevance. You have to have value proposition for your customers. And as you add more features, you can get to a real sweet spot where customers actually really enjoy your product. They see high value in it. But then something happens. You get really comfortable with your product, and you just start incrementally adding more and more features. And suddenly the delight of your customers starts to skyrocket down to a place where they go, "I don't see the value in this anymore. It's really complicated," and they're going to move on to a competitor. So it's not just a world where features win anymore. It's much more complicated. This is what I first stepped into when I joined Citrix. It was the better product, next release, to equal another node on that tree. That's what it was. It was the more nodes you can add, the better product you have. And that worked once upon a time, but it just doesn't scale anymore. Today, it's very much about the experience. Whether you're an end user using a consumer app like Snapchat, or if you're an IT administrator deploying very complex products, people don't want things that are cumbersome. They don't want to go to a week-long training class. You need to be able to show your buyer, whether it's a CIO or an end user, what your value is. And you need to be able to demonstrate that really, really quickly. Today, people want a demo. They want to see a proof of concept really quickly. They want to touch the product. They want to play with it. Just that feature spec list is not going to cut it anymore. So this is where we've been investing our time, taking those experiences from where it was one tree on a new node on a tree to really defining what is it our customers need. What information do they need? What mode do they need that information in? And it's really redefined our products and experiences here. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the lessons along the way. We started by looking for inspiration. And if you look at the companies that are doing design really, really well, first of all, it's a small set of companies. And they hold one thing in common as I look at this set of companies. They don't just look at the product or the service that they deliver. They really look at the entire ecosystem. They look at every single aspect that they deliver to their customers, whether it's the .com experience, going to the website to possibly learn about this product or service, to the service itself, to support, to thinking about how they get you to renew and engage. And that's how you really differentiate in your space. And that's what people are looking for today. They're looking for a full experience, which means they want to invest in companies that value them from start to finish. And I think very often, especially with new companies, we get caught up in trying to sell that service, trying to get the customer to buy. But that will only get you so far. Once people get into deployment, if they don't like it, if they can't get it up and running, if it's complicated, you're really going to lose loyalty. And what you want to be thinking about is customers for life. How do I build a brand that customers always want to be affiliated with, that always want to be associated with? When I think about our true goal, regardless of what kind of product or space you're in, this is what I want. I want to create a culture where we deliver product and services that our customers love. And I don't think that word is being overused. I really do think it's love. I mean, how rewarding is it when somebody comes up to you, when someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, I love GoToMeeting." That's a great feeling, and it means I'm proud to represent this company. I'm proud to represent the team that develops GoToMeeting. That's what you want. You want customer love, and you're going to get it by focusing on the whole experience that you deliver to your customers. The good news is it's not just that warm, fuzzy feeling of customer love that's great. It drives business. It drives your numbers. Customers are going to adopt and renew and invest more in your products if they see long-term value that they're getting out of it. And there are more and more studies and reports that are really demonstrating that this is the truth. This is the case. This is why more companies are investing in things like Net Promoter Score to really understand what are their customers saying about them, where do they see value, where do they need to improve. You need to acknowledge this, and you need to look at this as something that's core to your business. So in my mind, I think one of the things that you should all be thinking about is the vision. And when I joined Citrix, this is the vision that we established. We really wanted to create world-class products and services that drive exceptional customer experience that they love. We really want to create these experiences that customers love. And one of the things that I think will be quite relevant for everybody in this room is starting with a set of principles. What's important to you and your company and your organization, and what does good design mean to you? I think one of the most important principles in creating customer love and value is that you don't just value good, you value great. You really invest in great. It's not about just status quo, it's about being the best. And so for us, we created these principles 5 years ago, and they still stand the test of time today. And these were very valuable for us to start to get our mind as an organization thinking about what design means. That design is much more than an icon. It's really thinking about all of these aspects and thinking about them in absolutely everything we do. So I want to talk a little bit about each of these. I'm going to start with the one on the farthest on the right, which is focused on human goals, because to me, that is the core of success. You really have to understand your customer. You have to understand who they are. What's the value that you are delivering to them? How are you going to differentiate? At Citrix, and many of you may face the same challenge, we have a variety of customers that we need to serve. The customer is not just the person writing the check. You need to sit back and think about who are the people using your product. And for us, we need to think about the person who comes to our executive briefing center and they're going to buy our product. We need to think about the administrator who's got to roll out this product and configure it and manage it and monitor it. And then we need to think about the end user, the person who's going to have a version of Zen Mobile running on their iPad, and they need to get their tasks and their work done. All of these users are really important, and I think too often, certainly people who fall in our space in the enterprise area, they focus too much on that buyer, which again will get you sales, but will it get you long-term loyalty and love? No. So you really need to think about your customers holistically. And the way we do this is we walk a mile in their shoes. So I love that part of the program here is investing time in interviewing and talking to customers, and we're really investing in helping you understand how to know your customers. It's not about running that focus group and saying, hey, what do you want? It's about watching your customers, understanding the gaps and the pain that they have, and seeing where you can fill in solutions where it's going to make their lives easier, where you can add real value or even greater benefit to what they have today. And in my mind, when you do this, when you spend time out with your customers, observing them in their real world, that's where you develop this foundation of empathy. You can really think about things from their perspective, through their lens, and how it might benefit them. And it allows you to anticipate their needs. I think this is core. When you can be ahead of the customer and anticipate what they're going to need and what they're going to want, that's really powerful. And that will help you deliver a seamless experience, especially in today's world. If you have to interoperate with another product, if you have to transition from something, one product to the next product, these things need to be seamless. You really need to create a seamless experience for your users. And lastly, users want to feel empowered. They really want to feel like they are in control. They really want to feel like they can customize the experience to meet their particular needs. And if you can develop all those things, that's where you're really going to get the loyalty and the value and the long-term love from your customers. And I can't emphasize enough, if you're going to do one thing, this is the most important thing that you can be doing. Really invest time in understanding who your customers are. And we spend a lot of time out with our customers, and then we come back and we do these actual sketches and storyboards. I mean, this is real work from mobility research that we've done. Understanding what it's like to be a mobile worker and getting that people are transitioning from different places. This is where the seamlessness comes into play. Getting that people are on different networks. Getting that they're moving from one device to the next. And by doing this, we've had real aha moments that are influencing our product roadmaps. Things that we would not have discovered if we didn't go out in the field and watch our customers. Same with our administrators. This is just a little micro view, step back view of a day in the life of the administrator. You know, we want to understand our administrators and what a day is like for them and find those opportunities where we can really provide them delight, where we can make them their experience better. And by mapping their journey, it allows us to see those opportunities really clearly. So that's the real focus on the customer. But the next thing is simplicity. And this is one of the hardest things to do. You think, simplicity, why is this so hard? Well, it really, really is. It's one of the most challenging things to do, whether you're a consumer app or an enterprise app. And it's about being really focused and disciplined about how many features you're going to add. And it's so much more powerful to focus on a smaller set of things and to do them exceptionally well than to do a larger set of things and to do them in a mediocre way. One of the challenges we face in our space is that sometimes people will have the misperception that simplicity equals simplistic. They'll say, oh, no, but our product, it's very, very powerful. It has a lot of capabilities. That's absolutely fine, but you can still design and deliver those things in a way that's simple to the user. You know, one example that I think is quite relatable is something like Google Maps. The experience that I have in it as an end user is simple and beautiful. It anticipates what I want to do. And I feel really empowered. Yet there's so much complexity going on behind the scenes to make this beautiful interface appear. But they don't expose that to me. They don't ask me 500 questions. They anticipate my needs and deliver a really beautiful, simple experience. And these are the kinds of things that we need to strive for. Another area of focus is craftsmanship. This is really important as well. You know, it's about the fit and finish of your product. You really need to realize whether it is your website or your demo. People are making a first impression judgment based on what you put in front of them. And often something like the website is your first thing. Even if it's your business card, these things are very, very important. You want to look at the entire experience and really focus on that fit and finish across the board. Because it is so important, and people will make a judgment of quality based on craftsmanship. One of the examples that I think everyone is familiar with, and they do this wonderfully well, is Disney. I mean, they very much craft every element of that experience, from the sounds and the smells that you encounter when you come through the gates, to when and where you see Mickey Mouse and Minnie. They want you to leave feeling like this was the best experience on earth. So they pay an incredible amount of time and attention and detail to craftsmanship. Delight is also very, very important. And delight, what that experience is, varies based on what your value proposition is. But if I look at my world, delight can be giving them more time back in their day, getting someone to say, wow, that was easy. I mean, those are really nice ways that you can delight your customers. And again, it's not just your product or service where you can do that. Look across your ecosystem and think of ways that you can delight. One of the areas where we're seeing more and more companies invest in this is in the support area. I think Zappos is a great example of providing an exceptional support experience for their customers. And sadly, the bar for support has been so low for such a long time. If you just have someone who's remotely pleasant and solves your problem, you are delighted. So think about these areas where you can add value. This was a real experience for me with Amazon.com. Someone gave me a Kindle book and it didn't download, and I thought, I almost thought I'm just going to go buy it myself. But then this chat window came up, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just see what happens. And I typed in, hey, I received a book as a gift, but it's not appearing on my iPad. And I'm not kidding. Within 10 seconds, the guy said, close the app and reopen it. I reopened it, and the book was there. And I thought, wow. I thought this was going to be a huge headache, and this person on the other line fixed my problem incredibly quickly. Now I'll probably buy Kindle books as opposed to buying them through the iTunes store because of that experience. So all of these experiences really matter. And look for areas where you can add unexpected delight to your customers. And then, of course, the crux of what we're talking about here today is really innovation. You always need to make sure that you are delivering unique value. Whether you're a startup, you need to make sure that you're differentiating in some way, shape, or form compared to all your other possible competitors out there, or the 5 people next to you who may have the exact same idea. You need to think about how you're going to differentiate. For us as a larger company, you need to make sure that you don't get trapped in the mode of just adding small sets of features, that you're always thinking about what's the best great new idea? What are the new form factors that are out there? How do we adapt to those? We always need to push ourselves, and this can get challenging, especially if you're number one in certain areas in the market. You can get a little bit comfortable and not push yourself as hard, but it's really key to always be striving for the next best idea, because there's always somebody nipping at your heels ready to move you out from number one. So you always need to ensure that you're delivering that unique value. A company that I think has done this really well is Nike. They started out as a footwear company, this is what they did. They delivered running shoes, and now they've just transformed into a company that you think about and you affiliate with sports. They've branched into clothing, they've branched into gear, they've branched into technology and wearables. And what's interesting is after I put this slide together, I read the announcement that they're pulling out of the fuel band market. So that's an interesting segue to a topic I'll talk about shortly. But these guys are always trying to reinvent themselves. And, they'll test things, ideas, they modify, but a really interesting area where you can take inspiration. So again, these are our design principles. I challenge you to sit here today and think about what's meaningful and what's important for you and your organization. And it's a great way to get everybody in your company to rally around what design means to you and what are the things that you value. You want to do this very early on in the process, and that way it's something that you can always point back to. Actually, I do happen to have my badge on here at Citrix. We wear these on our hip at Citrix. So these are our design principles. If you see Mark Templeton in the hallway, he has these on his badge as well. And it's always a reminder of this is what's important to us. So I wanted to share a really quick story, because I think stories are quite impactful, about an unexpected area and a company that focused on these principles and really delivered an incredibly innovative solution. It has to do with the medical field, and a gentleman I've come to know over the years by the name of Doug Dietz, who works for GE Healthcare. And he is an engineer who's responsible for building MRIs. This is what he's been doing for over 20 years with this company. And he went off to the Stanford Design School, where he learned all about customer empathy and the design principles similar to the ones I presented here today. And said, wow, I've never gone out and watched anybody use my MRI. I've had one personally, but I've never really watched what this experience is like for other people. I'm going to pick a day and go camp out at the hospital and see what this is like. And he'd been there for about a half a day and watching and had some interesting little aha moments and had taken some notes. And then suddenly something very unexpected happened to him. The nurse said, I'm sorry, we've got a younger patient coming in. We're going to have to ask you to leave for this one because it's highly sensitive. And Doug went out into the hallway, and this is what he saw. He saw a young boy who was hysterically crying because he was so terrified at the thought of this machine having to be left in there by himself for a duration of 30 plus minutes in this terrifying cone and all these scary sounds. And he was so hysterical, he actually could not get the MRI done that day. He needed to return later at another day to be sedated to have the MRI. And Doug was horrified. He thought, I cannot believe, I never possibly imagined that my machine would evoke such a negative experience for a certain customer type, a young child. And he went back really inspired to his workplace and gathered a bunch of his colleagues and shared the story and learned some really interesting dynamics that for children, MRIs are really, really complicated. Most of them are too terrified to do this, and as a result, need to be sedated, which means increased cost, increased risk for the child, and increased stress on the parents and the child. And he thought there's got to be a better way. So he and some of his colleagues got together and brainstormed and came up with a whole variety of ideas, thinking about those design principles, and to me came up with one of the most compelling solutions. They created an adventure series for children for MRIs and really made this an experience. So before children would even come into the MRI, they received a storybook about the experience they were going to have. And in this case, it's a camping and adventure. And I kid you not, this is paint and stickers. That's all it took to transform this experience. And he has children who now come in and have these MRIs and say, I want to go back. They had such a phenomenal experience that they say, I want to go back. And he has measurable numbers that show the number of children who need to be sedated has plummeted dramatically. So real tangible return on investment for such a clever and brilliant solution, and it came from observing his users. So a wonderful example of focusing on all those design principles and coming up with just a wonderfully compelling solution. So I want to talk a little bit about design execution and some of the things that we think about from a philosophy and an execution perspective, obviously always keeping those principles in mind. The first one is that design really is everyone's responsibility. And whether you're a small company of 5 people or like Citrix, 9,000 people, we say here, design is part of everybody's responsibility. We all have a customer that we're trying to serve, and we all need to think about better ways that we can serve that customer. Even if you're HR or finance, we say your customer is actually the employee, and you need to be thinking about how you can serve those employees more effectively. So it's really a mentality that we're trying to drive throughout the entire company. But when it comes to products specifically, I think one of the areas that we really need to focus on is collaboration. And we use this term a lot about 3 in a box. And it's about getting design, product management, and engineering to work together throughout the whole process. And it doesn't particularly matter what your process is. There are all kinds of flavors of process. Lean Startup is a great process. But it's about collaboration. It's not about throwing deliverables over the wall. I think the best products result when you have this really healthy tension between these 3 functions, when they're all pushing and pulling one another because they have slightly different perspectives, but as long as they have that base, that common base and understanding of customer value, that's when you get the best products. And I know in startups, a lot of people wear many, many hats. That's not uncommon. You may be wearing product manager one day, and then you may be doing some coding on the side. But when it comes to design, there are some core skills that you are going to need to make sure that you're investing with on your team. A designer can, at the end of the day, everybody is a designer in terms of thinking about that customer, but you do need somebody who's going to open up Photoshop, who's going to create prototypes, who's going to do wireframes. And it's not to say that there can't be one or many people who do that, but you need to have these skills on your team. And sometimes people will say to me when I go over to the Startup Accelerator to engage with folks, well, at what point do I need to engage in design, or what point do I need to bring somebody with these skills on my team? And I say day one, and I truly mean it. Maybe you can't invest in somebody full time but get somebody part-time, get an intern. This is an important skill set, which I truly believe will allow you to differentiate from day one. And you look at so many of the startups that are wildly successful, a lot of the founders today actually have design backgrounds. So I think it's something that's going to allow you to add more value very, very quickly. So one of the great things about smaller companies is you already have that culture of experimenting and trying things. And the key thing for you is maintaining that culture, maintaining that culture of testing and trying ideas. And one of the most important things about maintaining that idea is allowing failure. I love this quote from Michael Jordan. Failure really is part of the process. And I always talk about the thing that you need to do is you need to learn how to fail, which sounds like a crazy idea, but I really think there's a good way to fail and a bad way to fail. And so I want to talk about some of the things that I've learned about failure, over the course of my career. It's interesting. Some of the things are very, very similar, very simple. And one of them is about giving people the right tools to fail. And by the right tools, this is the kind of workspace that a lot of companies provide. They provide cubicles and boardroom tables. And these are not good environments to help people experiment and to help people try different ideas. We used to have our design reviews with our CEO in this classic boardroom table. And the way we do them now is a completely different dynamic. It's so much more productive and it's so much more collaborative. You really need to move to these kinds of spaces, to open spaces, to spaces where people can write on every surface. When I talk about failing, it's about failing quickly and failing fast, and this means in low-tech ways. We spend our days in early concept design with stickies, with Post-its, with tables that you can write on. You can dream up as many ideas as you possibly want to under the sun, and there's no real cost if you erase them or throw them away. So it's about going low-tech early on and providing people with these tools. It's amazing how quickly we've come to a culture where we're back in offices and you go to sketch something out on a whiteboard and right away there's one whiteboard pen and it doesn't work and you go, oh, well. And it's the simple stuff like this that really matters. And a lot of you start this way from day one, but it's about maintaining it and making it part of your culture. If you go upstairs to our 5th floor here where most of our design team is, this is the kind of stuff you see everywhere, all over the walls, poster boards. You'll see whiteboards wheeled all over the place. It's not just about creating low-tech work. It's about putting it up and making it visible, having people walk by and having those aha moments and generating and adding things to real time. So there's something very, very important about making this process visible for people. And then it's about prototyping, taking those ideas and honing them down and creating prototypes. And a lot of times we will create physical prototypes and tell the story. Go back to that value proposition. What is this product or service? What's the value it's going to add for the customer? And paint out that scenario and what it looks like. And these are, again, ways that you can experiment. And if you fail, it's okay. Someone will poke holes or question things, and then you go, you're right, that doesn't make sense. This is also a really great time that we pull customers back in. We literally have a cardboard iPad that we insert sheets of paper in, and then we'll show to customers and go, what do you think of this idea? And they'll go, nah, and then we'll sketch something up and put another sheet of paper in. And it's a great way to experiment and get feedback quickly. To me, this is the core mentality, and you need to be open to this, because if you think you're going to get it right the first time, you're kidding yourself. You never do. So you need to be very open to feedback and open to this idea of iterating and evolving your ideas quickly. It's failing fast and failing early, and this needs to be the crux of everything you do. Too often people are so focused on that solution that they see, and they're just driving towards the solution, and they don't want to hear any of the feedback that people are giving them along the way. But it's absolutely key to success. You need to be open and listen to that feedback and evolve and iterate, and that's what's going to get you awesome. So at the end of the day, if I summarize, you really want to make design part of your DNA. You want to make it part of your DNA from day one. You want to adopt a set of principles that you rally around from day one and that you continue to rally around through the course of your evolution. And it's not just about how you think, it's about how you act. You want to act in ways where you're supporting those design principles. You want to allow people to experiment. You want to have spaces that facilitate that experiment, and you want to be okay with failure. I mean, it's all about thinking and acting and really supporting what your customer needs are. And that really goes back to that early point. If you do those things, if that's your focus, it's not a magic formula, but that's what's going to drive customer loyalty and customer love. And I think at the end of the day, that's something that we all strive for. So I want to thank you for your time. Hopefully I've given you a nugget or two to think about as you go back to your startup idea tomorrow. And I'm always available, Catherine Courage at Citrix.com, if you want to reach out with any questions. So thank you.